that what you asked?
Yes.
Okie dokie, yeah.
Always good to go?
Yeah. Yeah, just right.
Right? Okay, cool. I'm going to call our August board meeting to order. We shall do a roll call.
William Beck.
Here.
Maddie Knudsen.
Here.
Or, sorry, Colleen Lam.
Here.
Al Smith. Here. Shelby Poole. Ashley Potasic.
Here.
Carly Sherrill. Joe Valentine.
Super. Ashley, I'll ask you to read for us the WLA mission and vision for us.
The mission of WLA is to utilize leadership-based programs and strategies grounded in solid research, combined with the demonstrated success of core knowledge curriculum as a basis of a rigorous overall educational program that builds strong skills in math, reading, literature, writing, music, science, and technology. The vision of WLA is to be a school where students and graduates become exceptional leaders and are prepared to take on the academic and leadership challenges they will face in high school and beyond.
Spectacular. I'd like to approve our agenda for today. So I'm going to motion to approve our August board meeting agenda.
Second.
I have a second.
We
We need to,
need to have a discussion first.
we need a discussion.
No, because I want to make a proposal. I want to suggest
Okay.
that we move item 7.1, because I can't make a motion or anything.
Okay.
But I'm going to suggest that we move item 7.1, their presentation by Jason Blumenthal, to happen between items 5 and 6,
Okay.
so that we can, or to be next, you start appointing the new board members, the next, before the board report and everything,
Okay.
as the next item, so he can present and we can let him get on his way.
That sounds awesome. Okay, so I would like to motion to move item 7.1 to have Jason Blumenthal share with us his ideas about the development committee, move to be shared after 5.1.
Second.
Thank you.
Any discussion?
Okay, great. Any discussion? No discussion? Then I say it's, we have to vote or something? What do I say? Can I get an aye?
Oh, all in favor, say
Okay,
aye.
okay,
Say aye.
okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Awesome.
All opposed, say no.
Okay. The motion has been passed, so we're going to be moving 7.1 to after 5.1. Wonderful. Okay, now I'd like to motion to approve our August board meeting agenda.
Second.
Thank you, William. We have a second. Is there any deliberation? Discussions, yeah. No, okay. All in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Spectacular, that motion has been passed. So we're ready to move on to any conflict of interest declarations. We don't have any? Okay. So now we are going to move to our public comment.
No.
Nothing?
No.
Okie dokie. So now we're going to have Jason share with us his thoughts about development committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you pull up that?
Oh, yes.
Thank you. So I made a little, no, the other one. Yeah, right, we're to talk about,
Oh,
sorry.
no, you're good.
Talk about a development committee.
Oh, sorry.
Most not-for-profits have one. It is made up normally of people mostly not on the board of directors. And then you will have one board of director generally sits on it. And then oftentimes an ex officio, like the immediate past president or somebody like that, will sit on it. It is often a gateway to a board of directors. Wow, they did a great job on the development committee, they want to stay active, let's bring them onto the board. All right, we can go to the next page.
It's not scrolling.
There you go.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Thank
So,
you.
I'm not one of the people, I'm presuming you all know how to read, so I'm not gonna read it to you. But that's the point. A development committee's purpose is, development is a consultant speak way of saying raise money. And that's their mission. That is their job. Okay, next. Here's what they do. One of the pieces that is a little different for you is, and you may want to consider making somebody from the PTO or on this committee, or figure that out, so that you're working in alignment, not in conflict with each other. You're gonna do this type of thing, we're gonna do this type of thing. They might be the people that focus on events, and you might be the people that are focusing on individual, corporate, and business gifts and sponsorships. Might be a way to do it. But you want to be working together. I didn't even do the introduction. I'm Jason Blumenthal. I've been doing this since about 19...
I encourage you, I should have introduced you, I apologize.
That's okay.
So,
Yes.
I'll let you partially introduce yourself, but Jason's who we've been working with, Visionary Philanthropic, and our former board member, Greg Sane, introduced us to Jason, and highly recommend him. And in terms of his comments so far, also, Greg has agreed that he would serve on the development committee, so, just so you know. And from there, you can finish introducing yourself.
Sure. I've been doing this, I live on the other side of the river, sorry. And I've been doing this, I started my business in 1988, while still in high school, so I've been doing it a long time. I spend about half my time working with not-for-profits around the country. Most of my clients happen to not be in Minnesota right now, but sometimes they are. And then the other half of the time, I consult with ultra-high net worth families and individuals, helping them figure out what their mission is and what they want their legacy to be. So the billionaires, what I do. And a lot of this type of thing. We just finished another feasibility, and I work with a group called Visionary, which is a spin-off of the old pianist Lindsay. Jerry Pianist was the top fundraiser in the country. If you ever Google best-selling philanthropy books, they're Jerry Pianist. He wrote the book Mega Gifts. I was his personal researcher for many, many years. I'm a researcher by training, and so this all fits in. Okay, that's who I am, my credits. Yes, your development, yes, your fundraising, but, and Jonas has heard me say this before, just because somebody has money and you're a not-for-profit, you don't deserve their money. You have to earn the right? You're not entitled to it. So part of the development committee job is to make sure the message is crafted properly for whoever they're talking to, that they build the relationship. If we put you in the education sector, it often takes a year to 2 years after the first introduction before you're asking someone for a $10,000 gift or more. I mean, it's building a relationship. You have to earn that right. I believe, so we did a very deep dive of wealth screening, of looking at all of the families here, what their capacity is. There is capacity. There's greater capacity from the grandparents, right? So something that other schools like to do is really do a grandparents' day. Get them on the list, send them pictures, get them involved, sponsor your kid, and they got more money. And get them involved. Do not just think of them as a checkbook or a purse, right? You really want them involved. You want them. So it's that type of thing. That's the type of thing a development committee does. They're doing Another thing that the development committee should do is any time there is an event in any way, somebody from the development committee should be a part of it, thinking about, this isn't a fundraiser, however, how do we see this as an opportunity? Are we making sure to get names and email addresses? Are we reminding Jonas that every time he speaks to a group that we are a community school, we are funded by the state, and they do great, but we need your support also, right? Just that little thing. Or just putting up a board with a QR code, donate now. Just little things like that. That becomes the purview and the mission of the development committee. That they should be focused on the fundraising so that the other people aren't focused on it. Next slide, please. So, right, you show up, everybody on the development committee, and by the way, everybody on the board must make a gift. And it should be a meaningful gift. And a meaningful gift means something completely different from one person to the next. $50 might be meaningful to one person, $5,000 might be meaningful to someone else. But you have to. And I
Why?
generally, what's that?
Why?
Why do you have to? Because as we move forward over the next several years with development and fundraising, you will start going to foundations and corporations. And in every single foundation and corporation questionnaire is, do you have 100% board participation? Because if they're not bought in, then why should we be bought in? And they don't ask the amount. And again, it could be $10. But you just have to be able to say, everybody on the board has given. Make sense? Because it means you believe in it. That's what we're talking about there. Another part of the job for the development committee is to introduce people that have capacity. And I spend a fair amount of time going around Minnesota and around the country, meeting with board members, with development people, and we'll get the game out of the way right now. The game is often, so who do you know in your world that might be interested, might believe in the mission, might understand how important WLA is to the community, and why, an investment of, $5,000 or $100,000, or pick the number, would be. And the person I'm talking to 90% of the time goes, boy, I don't know anyone like that. But everybody does. And you hire people like me, or the development committee does the research. And you find out, oh, you went to Carleton, and you graduated in 2002, right? And the CEO of Best Buy, went there and said, you know Corey Berry? Well, yeah, we went to school together. So you could reach out to him, right? You're building those relationships. You are not necessarily responsible for asking people for money. For many people, when you look at the list of greatest fears, right, people would rather jump off a cliff or get eaten by a tiger than ask somebody for money. That's okay. It's great if you do, but it's also Jonas's job. So, asking is always better peer-to-peer. But if it's, you've got a cousin who's very active and understands, but you really don't want to ask a family member, then all you're doing is just saying, I'm on the board, I care about them, they're amazing, I really think that this would, check off all the boxes that you care about too, could we get you in for a tour? That's all you're doing. That's it. And generally, development committee people, and even board, should do, you pick a reasonable number, 3 to 5 people each a year. That's how many they should be responsible. And it could be people, it could be businesses, right? Orange Therapy, just, their world headquarters are right down the street now. It's a $1 billion company. somebody knows somebody there. Let's figure it out and get the introduction. That's the type of thing. And then just always talk it up. Just always talk up WLA. Why they're so important to the community, right? I think, Jonas, we boiled it down into like one sentence that you can't necessarily use, which is, we don't want dumb people, right? You know, that's why. Because you're gonna get the people to go, well, I don't have a kid, and I'm not sending my kid there, and say, yeah, but do you go to Target? Do you shop? Do you bank? Do you do anything yet? Well, then we want smart people working here, and that's what WLA does. Okay, next. So that's pretty much it. That's their job. You know, strengthening the financial resources, building it up. You've done great with very little outside financial assistance. The odds of the state giving you more money per student in the future are, you know, not good. So what do? This is what we do. Okay, is it questions, concerns, issues? Make sense?
Totally.
And the purpose is, with the development committee, is kind of an ongoing piece to continue to support
Correct.
school and add to what we do.
Correct. And depending on how you've written it in your charter, in most cases, they do not have governance. Right? They don't have decision making. They're a subcommittee, so the person from the development committee reports to the board, here's what we would like to do, and then you approve it. Right? We would like to send out this letter to the 25 businesses within 5 miles and hold an open house, and then you approve it. I didn't put that in there because I didn't want it to be officially in writing, and because this also leans into the feasibility study. Something that I would recommend the development committee do is do some sort of, we talked about this briefly, right? Some sort of event here for the city officials, talking about how amazing and exciting and expanding you are. That gets their buy-in, right? That gets them, oh yeah, they're including me, they're showing me what they're doing. And I don't care if it's just in the lobby there, and then 10 aspirational photographs. And then you sit and talk about how you were helping to take Woodbury, which is already great, and make it even better through this. Do one with them, do one with the chamber. You know, we are helping prepare your future employees. We want to talk to you, we want your input. You can do stuff like go to the business and say, we're expanding and we're building this high school. If you could run a class and teach a special class, what skill set do these kids need to know to come work for you, right? Then you are getting the buy-in from them. There's an old cliche that in fundraising, if you want people's advice, ask them for money. If you want people's money, ask them for advice. But you actually have to listen to them. It's not just lip service. So those are the kind of ideas that a development committee comes up with and runs with.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
That's one of your 2 presentations.
Oh yeah, and now we'll do it real quick.
The technical is not being my friend.
It's okay. You are all hopefully aware you are in the process of doing a feasibility study. You're aware? You're aware? You're aware? Okay.
Unless somebody wasn't on the board when we approved it.
Okay.
Maddie might not.
We can go to the next page.
That's okay.
Okay. So here's why you're doing it. In a couple sentences, a feasibility study is we write a case statement, which is why somebody should consider giving money to Woodbury. Then we interview about 30 people in the community, from stakeholders, parents, to that would be direct stakeholders, then to indirect stakeholders, which would be the mayor, the city manager, that type of thing, people that you really want their buy-in to talk you up. And then some people with significant financial resources that aren't directly involved. And you send them the case statement, and it's a draft. And then myself and Christine Pullenbrink interview the people. About an hour each, and their questions, vary. They start at the 30,000 square feet. How did you first learn about Woodbury Leadership Academy? What was your first connection? What do you think about them? What do you think about the leadership? What do you think about the board? What do you think about the staff? Talk to you about your thoughts about each of those. How would you define success for a school? What does that mean to be successful? And then you ask questions like, who else is doing a campaign that you know of? Who else do you give money to? I'm not asking you for money, but if the right person at the right time did ask you for money, how much would you consider giving? What did you like about the case statement? What didn't you like about the case statement? How could we make it better? What should we not talk about? What should we talk about more? And then we take all that information. It's, next page. Yeah, right. Then we take all that information and we get realistic goals. We find out just because the leadership of Woodbury thinks something is the most important, that doesn't matter if the people that have the money aren't going to fund it. Right? It's the forest through the trees, it's this, it's that, and you never chase the dollar. I've had multiple occasions over the years where somebody has said, it's not listed in this case statement, but I'd write them a check for $5 million now if they'd add a technology center. And say, well, sir, they're a homeless shelter for sexually exploited, women and girls. It's really not their mission. I know, but it's what I care about. Well, no. Right? That's awesome. Can I try and talk to you about why you still should be involved? But you listen to the community. And we do things like, in the case statement, we're talking about, building out the upper school, renovating the lower school, adding money for athletics, adding money for arts and theater, and adding money for teacher retention. It's illegal in the state of Minnesota to do a campaign to raise money for teacher salaries. So you can't legally do that. However, you can raise money for teacher incentives, just not for pay. So, and you ask, and we talk about all those things, and here's how much money we're looking at what you're saying. Which of these is the most important to you? Which of these do you think should be the priority for the school? Is this a realistic number? And you ask them questions like, who else should we be talking to? Who should be on the committee? Who should be an honorary chair? And we take all that information, and we put it into Alchemer, and it's 100% anonymous, and then we come back and we say, right, 80% of the people thought this was the most important, 70% thought this was the least important, here's the words that kept coming up, here's what they think we need to add, and then we make changes based on what they said, or we don't make changes based on what they said. Right? I've had clients before that have said, no, I don't care that that's what 75% of the people said, we are sticking with this, and this is what's most important. And then we go back to them and say, that's great, then you're not raising $40 million. And that's fine, that's your right, then you're raising $5 million. Okay, you get to make that decision. So that's what we do. It also becomes, all of these people that we're interviewing, we're gonna go back and bring into the campaign, either as a volunteer or to ask money, build that relationship with. This becomes the first touch point. So they already know about it. The second touch point is once we get the revised case statement, we write up an executive summary, and Jonas, Patrick, and Ben reach out to all of these people and say, would love to spend 15 minutes talking to you about the results. Here's what we found. Thank you so much for the input. It really made a big difference. You'll notice some of the changes. Okay, fly through. We've done 11. We've scheduled another one today. We've got 10 more people who have said yes, but have not scheduled. So that's where we are. And when we're done, we'll get what we talked about. Next. Thank you. All right, I think we talked about all this. Yeah, then we come back and basically we give you a presentation and say, here's our findings. We think you can raise X amount. I mean, it's going to be one of three things. It's either, yes, we think you can raise 35 million over 4 years or 5 years. You know, we think it should be 20 million or 50 million, depending on what we hear, right? So it's yes with an amount, no with no, not yet. It could be, we don't think you should do it yet. Instead, we think we should spend the next year building up the development and the fundraising and building these relationships and really push hard to get with the Rotary Club people and get with the small businesses and really get your name out there and the name recognition. That might be another recommendation. You know, what the recommendation is not going to be no, don't do anything. I can tell you that now, but I don't know what else it's going to be. All right, last slide. This is important. This is what it does. You know, I can't tell you, okay, super confidential. However, we interviewed the mayor. The mayor was like,
You're on stream.
what's that?
You're being streamed, though.
Okay. We interviewed a lot of people, and it was great. And we interviewed city officials, and it was great. And they appreciate being involved. And everybody does. Everybody we have interviewed has been awesome and given us really good information, and we're looking forward to the rest of the people. And it's a really good one. It's a really good, you know, like, we're really happy with what we're getting, with what people are telling us.
It's amazing that people have, you know, like, not that people haven't heard of us, but that people would have heard of us. You know, like, we're, I guess, probably gaining traction, you know, but that the mayor would know what a charter school is doing, you know, because I think that a lot of times charter schools are, you know, they're quiet. They're not the district school. So it's great that people in the community do know.
You're part of what makes this community so desirable to live in, right? If you just say the great schools, you're part of the great schools.
Sure.
You are an option for people. You know, they've got all these different things. You know, you've got, what, it's 3 different school districts, really, in essence. And if you look at all the public schools, the charter schools, the private schools, and the parochial schools. And your test numbers, like, blow pretty much everyone in the state out of the water. So, but you're also new. I mean, you're new.
Relatively speaking.
Yeah, you're new compared to. So,
And we particularly shine in that way when we look at achievement difference between white students and students of color, where we almost have none.
yeah,
That's where we really shine.
yeah, you are. You're
And one of the messages that we're floating is the idea that, hey, lots of people are talking about closing the achievement gap. We're doing it.
Yes.
Help us do it for more kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's kind of the early-
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I keep saying to people is they're not working on closing the gap. they've closed the gap. And it's not just that they've closed the gap, but white student numbers are even higher. So everything is lifted. So, I would like to see other charter schools come and start touring you to see why you're so successful. What is the special sauce? How can they do it? And that's why now again, a lot of it might be repeatable, but not all of it's going to be repeatable because a lot of it's the people. And you can't repeat the people. And that's part of the success, which is why we want the campaign, which is why we want the development committee to build on that success.
What questions do people have for Jason? He's covered a lot. One, when the feasibility study interviews are done and you have results, you'll come back to the board and present
Yes.
those results. That's the
Yeah.
plan.
So what we'll do is, when they're done, we will put together an Alchemer, the thing. We'll meet with the leadership group that's been part of this, you, Jonas, Patrick, and Ben. And, right, that, the group, and we'll give you the results. And then we'll say, here's how you could change it based on this, and here's what would likely happen. Then you decide how you want to make those changes or not. If you want to make those changes, then Dave, our writer, makes the changes. And then we come back to you and we say to the board, here's what our findings were, here's what your next steps could be, and then you decide what you want to do.
And you're thinking that's 2-3 months out?
I think that we should be done with the interviews by this point next month. So 6, and then we will have within 2 weeks, so 2 months, we'll have the results and everything ready. Then depending on the changes, a couple weeks. So yeah, 2 to 3 months, worst case scenario.
Yeah, so we'd probably be ready to present to the leadership team, but by the time we would present to the board,
Yeah.
the chance is probably November. Director,
Yeah, yes.
Cassidy, can you kind of make a note to have that tentatively on our November agenda?
Yep.
And of course, if it gets done sooner, we can move it up and,
Yeah, exactly. And we'll get you all the executive summary. You don't need the 85 pages of what everybody said. But yeah, we'll get you that, and it's, overwhelming support for this, less support for this. And then you don't decide that day, right? The board takes as long as they need to decide what they want to move forward with and how they want to move forward.
Do you foresee a special session after that?
well, the way I'm figuring out this stuff progresses and the way this is kind of the long game, and nothing's probably gonna move real fast. Even when you go back to the first thing that Jason said, that you probably need at least a year worth of relationships where you've had 4 meetings before you're ever asking anybody for money. So I don't think we would have a reason to rush to a special session where we couldn't wait whenever it is till the next meeting, right?
Yeah, I agree. The only time piece on this is you do not want to go back to the people that you interviewed 8 months later, right? You want that to be a few months later. But you can do that before the board's made any decisions. Just say, here's what our findings were, here's what the new case statement is gonna look like. That's all, and then that becomes your second touch point with them. And then you can say, the board will be deciding in the next couple weeks how we proceed, and we will let you know. So there's absolutely, this is a long term. You are in a great situation, which is, unlike so many other not-for-profits, you are not desperate. Yeah.
So that's right. So one thing I want to follow up on, and then we probably should move along. But especially with some of our members went through, and I kind of shared with board members what you had said when we first met back in the spring with Greg and Patrick and everybody. How much of my job, what percentage of if my work week was 40 hours, not easy, but if it was a 40-hour week, like how many hours a week on average should I be spending in this to have the best chance to be successful? And does that number vary at different stages and how
Yes.
much and so on and so forth?
So if you are in a full-out campaign, oftentimes the chief executive of the not-for-profit is spending upwards of 60% of their time in fundraising.
So even when you think about timing, I can't do that while I'm serving as the interim assistant principal. And the board also has to determine, is that what you want me to do? To
Right.
maximize this? Or like, we have to figure out together, I mean, that's not the job description when I interview for the position, that's not the way, and my job is a job, you do whatever it takes. But it's important that the board and I are on the same page about what that looks like, sounds like, feels like, you evaluate me and so on and so forth, and I can be out raising tons of money and things can be falling apart here, right? And so, you know, we need to have that conversation. At some point, we're not at a place where that's the case now.
No.
But now I'm spending some time on it. I'm putting a lot of emails, text messages, following up, trying to get these interviews scheduled. But it's 5% of my time.
It's gonna, Rick, it's like you said, it's gonna be waves. If you do a campaign, there might be weeks where it's 20% or 10%, but then there's gonna be weeks where it's 70 or 80% of the time, because you've gotta go on 8 calls. Because if we get the orange therapy C-suite people, you need to be in that meeting,
Yes.
right? It needs to be executive to executive.
And it's also the type of things where you're not trying to be efficient. The longer you spend with people, the more you develop relationships. So you're not trying to schedule meetings where you have another meeting, schedule a meeting for an hour where you have another meeting in another hour. Like, you need to be prepared in case it can go longer. So those are things that we just need to think about that tie into this, that I want to make sure we're all on the same page
Yeah.
and that we have a good plan all the way around
And
when we
it's-
get to that point.
And it's
when we make a
something
decision.
we need to know as the consultant. One of the things we always say is, okay, should you choose to move forward, we recommend you move forward with a campaign. You choose to move forward with a campaign, we give you this sheet, and it's gonna say, how much time are you prepared to spend on the campaign? And if the CEO, the big boss, says 10%, that adjusts everything. That either means it goes from a 2-year campaign to a 5-year campaign, or it means less money, or, right, it means things. It's important, and that's fine.
And there's also the reality that, you don't need to get in the weeds in this, but there's also the reality that part of the decision could be, do we hire somebody to support the work? But with the understanding that, we're spending money on the feasibility study right now that we're not gonna recover that money this year, right? In all likelihood. And how much can we spend before we start recovering money?
You're
Are
exactly
all
right.
things we need to figure out. Support.
You're exactly right.
And
And we'll put that in when we give you, if we say you can move forward with a campaign, we will put in there a proposed campaign budget that other people have used. And, pick a number. If it's a $20 million campaign, you might end up spending $1.5 million to raise that $20 million. And part of that $1.5 million would be, after you raise the first $100,000, you hire somebody to support, right? They become a campaign coordinator, or they become a development
So
person.
another local organization, which is a very different type of organization than us, but schools, religious schools, just religious, but they raise about $10 to $11 million a year through the development, but they spend over $1 million a year to raise that.
Exactly.
And that's one example I know. And then, what risk do we want to take in spending money without knowing what you're all things for later.
Yeah,
I
these
think
are
we
all-
can move on
yeah.
now, but.
Okay, but yeah, we will include that when we show you, right, here's what you would And we'll even say to you, if you hired a development coordinator, he didn't do a campaign, but chose to hire a development coordinator at $60,000 a year, you'd make nothing on them the first year, because they're probably not, but by year 3, we think they could be bringing in $300,000 a year, right? You know, that's the kind of stuff that we'll show you.
Thank you, Jason.
You got it.
Very well done.
Thanks, everyone. Any questions, anytime?
We'll see you
Text,
at
call.
We'll see you in our meeting tomorrow then.
Yes, exactly. We're all set for tomorrow.
Yes.
Teams.
Yes, Teams.
Teams,
Friday.
not-
Yes.
Perfect. All right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Jason.
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I did email all of you the case study.
Thank you.
See it yet?
Yeah, thank you.
I know you already had it.
I don't know.
You haven't yet?
No.
It's draft right now.
Okay.
I just,
Like currently, you just email.
while he was talking.
Okay. Not checking emails.
All right, it is time to appoint our newest board member. Maddie Knutson was elected to take the teacher seat on our board, and she will affirm her pledge to our WA school board.
I affirm.
Fantastic, thank you. You've finished your trainings, and so you're ready to rock. Awesome, thank you.
Please be sure to note that she affirmed the pledge and she's completed trainings. I mean, I know you, right, but kind of highlight that in the notes if the other for sure sees it when they, one of those things when they do their review, they'll be looking for, so.
Wonderful, we have our board report.
There's nothing else we want to just mention about the other vacancy.
Oh, that's a good point.
Point it out.
Yeah, I mean, we do have an open parent seat. Greg was previously on our board and ran, has indicated he would be willing to serve, although if we feel like we have somebody else who would do a good job, his preference would be to go this time to the development committee. Like, he'd be doing it more to help out, you know, than he feels like where his passion is around the development. So, if we don't have somebody else, he would do it, but do we want to put out maybe feelers and see who else comes forward, or with that in
Do you want
mind?
me to reach out to the PTO?
Yeah, that probably would be a good place to
Yeah.
start.
Also, there was that other parent that was a fifth grader from last year. I don't know if that family's still at our
They
school.
unenrolled.
They-
They unenrolled. They switched, and then that's the reason why the Ryan is no longer, is because his kid doesn't come here anymore.
Okay.
It can't hurt, but we should probably do
We
something
can get it on our
where,
parent page.
what's that?
We could get it on the parent page.
Yeah, I think we probably want to do something where it goes out in some type of parent square communications, and
Yeah.
everybody has a chance to see it. And then typically, the board is able to appoint somebody, or the board could elect to hold a special election, which is just kind of labor intensive, but if the board doesn't want to, we choose independent parents, I believe is the way we want to do it. Or we could also say we're just going to wait for the election in May to fill the spot.
I know in
Yeah.
the ones before, they had 2 interested, so they just had a small 2 or 3 people interview those candidates, and then chose one at a time. If there was more than one.
Yeah. So I think that is an action item that we should probably mull over in terms of which direction we want to go, and have that when our chair is here and the whole board's here next month, maybe decide how we want to go on that. So, which would mean not sending out any notice or anything until the whole board's had
Yeah.
a more thorough discussion on that one. Agreed?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's a big rush. We have,
Mm-mm.
most boards are 7 members. They typically range from 5 to 9, right? So we're on the high end of what the norms.
Do we still have a representative, or you're a community member?
I'm a community member now.
You're a community member, so we don't no, we
Carly's
do. We
a
have-
parent.
Yep,
Joe
and
is.
so
The
is Joe. Okay.
law is that you need to have at least one of each.
Yep.
And in our bylaws, that's what it says too.
Yep.
The board members seem to remember that at some point they voted to say you were gonna have 3 of each. But currently our bylaws don't actually say that. And I think our bylaws also say we'll have between 5 to 9 members. It's like we're not operating with outside the bounds of law or outside the bounds of our bylaws by waiting, if that makes sense. So we don't necessarily have to fill the position either. And, you know, I think you would have to fill positions if you got down to less than 5 and didn't have 1 of each. But you could go in a direction you want.
Quorum is based on the number of those appointed, right?
The number of current board members.
Okay, so not necessarily for the spots, but for the, okay.
So right now we have, our quorum number doesn't change right now. We have 8 board members. So you need to have over 50% for a quorum, so you still need 5. But if you put down 1 more number,
Yes, sir.
right, 4 out of 7. So we can, and that's been the practice of this board, as I understand it, has typically been to try and fill seats relatively quickly when they open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, I don't have any recommendation in any different direction. Just mull it over and I think we can go any direction on that.
I think it'd be good to just put it out there, and if somebody's really excited about that opportunity, that would be cool.
Someone really wants it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, superintendent report.
That's me.
Yes.
All right. Let me get to the right place. Miss Cassidy has it up there. All right. So our committees met as usual. In August on the 13th for finance, on the 14th for governance. We've disbanded the facilities committee with the idea we're exploring the development committee, which is why one of Jason's presentations today was about what the development committee would be. And so we wanted to get a little more information before we decided if that's what we would do to add for the committee. So it's just the 2 committees for right now. The transportation bus route information was supposed to be mailed, the postcard was supposed to go out today. I have not received confirmation that it did. That was my understanding. Last night, they sent those revisions, and I said, is this good to go to the mail tomorrow? And I said yes, so hopefully it did. But I've added this little piece here. I revised the top one and added the bottom one, since if you looked at it earlier today, or the whole thing is added if you first looked at the report earlier in the week. So with the revised bus routes, in the afternoon scheduled route times, 382 students, or 46% routes, are scheduled to be 30 minutes or less. 541, 65%, 40 minutes or less. 714, 86%, 50 minutes or less. And 99.5%, 826 out of 840, are 60 minutes or less. So we still have 4 routes that are 1, 2, 3, 4 minutes over. Our goal with all the changes we were making was to try and get 100% of the routes under 60 minutes. That may still happen if there's a few drops because of students over before school starts, or when even after school starts, because at this point, we are not adding any additional stops. Any students that want to enroll at this point, and it's been this way for a while now, we're only enrolling if they're able to ride from an existing stop or provide their own transportation. And so for a long stretch, it was, if adding you would not put us over 55 minutes, we would, consider it, from what the routes were in July. And so there's a few ads, but most ads would have been onto routes that were 55 minutes already, or would have been over 55. So I think since we said that, there's only been a handful of added routes, right?
Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah. So the median route time is 32 minutes. Half of our kids' routes are 32 minutes. There is a reality that this is much, much better numbers than what you were looking at a year ago.
We serve such a large area too.
Yep. It's much better with the added routes and all the work we did in the front end and not adding routes late and making them less efficient. And for the vast majority, the routes are shorter this year than last year. There are exceptions to the rule. When you start from scratch with the new reality of more routes and this year's, you make the most efficient routes, there's a couple students that routes are 20 or 30 minutes longer than they were last year, right? Even though for the vast majority it's shorter. And so there's a few parents that have expressed displeasure that, the routes are significantly longer. Those are not routes that are over an hour or anything, but for the vast majority it's much, much better. The other thing is that the purpose of us sending out postcards in July with their estimated times. So we sent out the postcards, estimated times saying these shouldn't change by more than 5 minutes, right, from when they are in July. And the purpose was to give families the ability to start planning and work schedules and when they, we know it's not going to be exact with, there's some changes that can happen and crops and so on and so forth. But we were able to 100% meet that, what we stated for the morning routes. No morning routes changed by more than 5 minutes since the July postcard. There were 27 students, so 3%, that changed more than 5 minutes from the July. And some of that was, there were a couple where it was our mistake, we kind of had to stop. And of course, also students that withdraw, that's going to change the routes. We can't control that. The vast majority of those, I think all but 4 or 5, were more than 5 minutes shorter routes and earlier. So it does mean the family, if they're making their plans and or getting home in the afternoon, could be not as good. But for the most part, that would be a good change for most families. So those families that routes were shorter and were less than 10 minutes, we're sending just kind of a email letting them know and apologizing that we did our best to keep it. There were 4 families whose rides were longer, and they were 11, 12, 13 minutes longer. And so we're making personal phone calls to those families to at least let them know why and that we did our best to apologize and, that kind of thing. But, until you do it, you can't know for sure. We felt like we'd be able to keep it within 5, and 99.5% is pretty good. And even with the 0.5% that we didn't hit that, most of them were shorter, so. But there's a few outliers, so, it could be a few upset people, and we just, to make the system the best and most efficient for everybody, somebody's gotta have the longest route on the bus, right? There's no way to avoid it, and it doesn't feel fair to that person who's the longest on the bus, no matter what. And it kind of is what it is. So, enrollment, looking really solid. We are at 11:21 today, so on Monday when we did this was 11:26, with our target enrollment being 11:32. That number is significantly higher than the 1,090 we budgeted for in spring, because we added an additional 3rd grade class and an additional 4th grade class based on the large waiting list in July. And so that's where that changed, and so on and so forth. Our largest number of openings is at 1st grade. We are doing some targeted mailings. One that went out today is to about 900 families that have 6-year-olds for 1st grade. And another that will go out Monday is for households that have 9, 10, and 11-year-olds. The grades where we have some openings. But of course, we'll only enroll families that can go from an existing bus stop or provide transportation. So we'll see where that goes. but certainly appears we're exceeding our expectations. And yeah, so and it was a big jump. It's going to be a lot on our staff and our community to adjust to this year. But one of the things we really talked about that we feel good about is while it's going to be a tough year in terms of, it's going to be more crowded in buildings A and B this year than we would like. But with adding the sections we added, we're now at least with our kind of number one plan, which is if these two buildings stay K6 and across the street becomes 712, we're at the maximum number of sections we want in these two buildings. We don't have to add more sections next year. So by filling all of that, we can start to now just replace and get to a stage where less percentage of our teachers is new and less percentage of our students is new, and start to really that to be able to build instead of extending that another year where you're trying to add more sections. So I think that we kind of hit a point where we were growing so much this year where whether it was 1 or 2 more sections probably didn't matter at that point. It's so much growth anyways. Let's make it 1 year worth of that instead of extending it to another year. Was kind of the tipping point in that discussion, if that makes sense. For instructional leadership, we hosted a 3-day responsive classroom training here last week. 22 of our teachers attended that training. As a result of that training, they provided us, of us hosting, letting us use the space, we received an additional 20 licenses for the social emotional curriculum and the online components of it. We'll be talking about how we can use. Additionally, tomorrow we'll have 20 staff members attending an all-day training in what's called the Catalyst approach. There's a lot of overlap with some of the responsive classroom principles, but feels a little less focused in the elementary grade level. And that's one thing we've heard from our middle school and upper school teachers is a lot of what we're doing here feels, because the biggest percentage of our school is in K5, and up the middle and high school is newer. Some things feel like they're kind of an extension of what we're doing in elementary, and this kind of gives us a way to kind of have their own thing a little bit on some parts of it. And it's consistent with all the concepts. It's not like it's something radically different. But it should help teachers have some different strategies to use in building their classrooms and their instruction this year.
Is that training in person or online?
In person.
Okay, good.
So Northeast College Prep was already hosting a training that day for 20 of their staff members. And so we reached out to them and splitting the cost so we can spend the 20. So that's kind of how that played out. As that opportunity arose, and we took advantage of it. There is a lot more we could do with the Catalyst approach. They provide coaching for teachers. They do lots of ongoing development. We want to see how the team feels about the training tomorrow. So I told them I wasn't committing to anything beyond tomorrow. And that probably isn't in the budget this year, but we'll reevaluate that after the training based on the feedback from our staff.
Sounds awesome.
So then, again, this is kind of the same as last year, but with additional field work and all the, throughout July statement, or bills still come in that were from last year that get applied. So in July, when we reviewed the end of June financials, they weren't really final because there were still bills coming in from the previous year. But it appears that we're going to be significantly more in the positive than we initially budgeted. I think our budget was somewhere in the 200s in the positive for the year, and it appears we'll be over 400 in the positive. So we won't know everything for sure until the audit work is complete. And that's a good thing because a number of pieces tied to our bonds and our building, the more we can have that fund balance raised, we'll have more flexibility in the future. That's a good thing. As I mentioned, where our enrollment's looking currently, we revised the working budget to 1,115 ADMs in the financial reports. And thought it was important to point that out because there's added expenses in the working budget too, when you're adding more teachers and more kids. So continue to work and revise as we go there. As of today, the only positions we had available are a second grade special education position and a special education paraprofessional position. We did unexpectedly have one position arise yesterday. We think it's possible the position was offered and we're gonna know tonight. So before I get way too worried about it, we'll hold off on that, because it might already be filled even. But we have a plan A and B in there too. So. And what else? Oh,
Was that newly added, the renderings, was that newly added?
yes, I received that email 2 minutes before this board meeting.
Nice work,
Yeah.
getting it in
And so
there.
while Jason was presenting, I was
Yeah.
pasting them in here. So before you pull them up, the renderings, so this is for the dream, right? So these renderings are not anything we have money for, right? They are like, ooh, we can go out and raise $40 million over the next 3-4 years. This is, so we want to start with like the aspirational, what if we could do whatever we wanted, and have that as a, you know, then come back based on what they tell us and what science and what we're going to do. But, so this is for like the aspirational dream of where this could go. If you're able to pull it up, okay, this is rendering 1. So what you're looking at here, so this would go in the, like I think, the draft case statement, this would go in the final case statement if we decide to include these things in the final case statement. Or, that's kind of the idea, right? But so, maybe a little bit, this is building A that we're in right now. Building B is that way. This is 8147 that we're purchasing and renovating. On the far side, this is the addition that we're doing starting in November. It's a building. So this would be like a performing arts center and gymnasium and almost connect the campus where it would be like 5 buildings. Does that make sense? The way it would look. Almost feel like a college campus.
Yeah.
And so that's one rendering, then just click the arrow. That's just a different angle of the same thing with playground equipment.
Oh, good. Yeah. That's what I want to know. Where's the playground equipment?
Yes. Well, so especially since people could be watching, let me just say about the playground equipment. We're going to put the playground equipment across the street.
In the pond.
Yes.
Yeah. Not in the pond, but.
Yes.
That's the
And we fundraised the money to do that over the last couple of years.
Yes.
And we even had on hold specific equipment before I came to purchase.
Sure.
The delay in actually doing it is getting to where we have an overall site plan with everything we're doing with adding that building. And what then would happen across the street and what the options are. And the concern being that we put all this equipment in, and now that needs to be parking, and now we gotta rip that out and put it somewhere else a year later, and so on and so forth. So the delay has been, like we probably would have put it in over this past summer, you know, that we're just finishing, if we hadn't purchased that building and have, still trying to figure out what we're gonna be able to afford to do and what our long-term plan is. And they're preparing, so right now we're in the process of preparing a site plan. The site plan will not include these buildings, right? This dream down the road. it is, we need to have a site plan to the city for to start construction that the city's approved on the addition to the building to 8147. So we need to get a site plan approved first. That's, we're hoping to have submitted to the city in the next 4 to 6 weeks type of range, and that's what we're working towards. So that's been the delay, and until we get an approved site plan and have the whole thing that we figure out, and even that the board approves and everything, that's been the delay. And you know, I would anticipate that perhaps in the spring or summer next year we'll be able to put the playground equipment in. But until we have a plan, I don't want to make any promises, because then they get delayed and so on and so forth. But you kind of get some ideas of the deal with the pickleball courts and the standard soccer field there. But then there was discussion, you know, we're going to have high school students, that's a standard size soccer field for middle school. You wouldn't be able to play high school varsity events on that field. But if you made it bigger, then you would cut into that parking spot area, and we might not be able to do much parking. And are we going to have enough parking with the construction, depending on what we do? So there's a lot of dominoes there that are just have kind of left us in a bit of a holding pattern. And that's the reason. So, anyways, that's that. And so I will also say communication. You know, I've sent a handful of messages to families through Parent Square. You all saw that, sent a message today that I felt like needed. And you know, that message, and even probably a message I'll be sending tomorrow or Monday. You know, we're all really super excited about the current school year and where we're all heading, but you know, we're also going to need to be, you know, firm about we're not changing bus stops if we're going to keep these route times down.
Yeah.
And so between trying to be firm about not changing classes and not changing route times, that is a cultural shift for our school. And in the end, I believe that it's the best for all of our students. It will keep our route time shorter by not adjusting and trying to cater to families to have routes go to their house. And it will make the classes blend right, not trying to do you know, making the first priority what parents request for teachers. But not everybody's going to be happy about that. And but I do think it's the best thing for our school, and I'm trying to communicate clearly. Here's, you know, that this is a change in how we've done things, mm-hmm. and here's why. And you know, I'm sure that the vast majority of our families will understand that that's in the best interest. But you know, it's hard when you have a crying child because they're not in the class with their friends, and it's hard when you know you don't have the same teacher that your older sibling had that they loved and your family loves, you know, and you know, so that's just the reality. But trying to communicate well about it and do it in a proactive way as opposed to reacting as much as possible. And that's my report.
I have a quick question. I don't mean to steer us down a different lane,
Mm-hmm.
but these shaded pavilions, they look spectacular. They remind me of solar panels. I'm wondering if solar energy has ever been in the conversation for as our school is growing, and how we can do that to support the electric needs of our school.
Yes. So, and this isn't fully embedded, what I'm going to say here.
Okay.
Is what one or two attorneys told me, or people in the process of closing on the building across the street.
Mm-hmm.
They said as soon as you purchase that building, some people, you know, these companies will reach out to you about doing solar, mm-hmm. and so on and so forth. And she's like, that's a nightmare with your bonds and the use of your bonds. And I strongly suggest you don't go there. Okay. I don't have an explanation enough to say whether I agree with that or not, mm-hmm. but that is something that I was advised by the attorneys in this whole process of closing. And there are some things, because we have tax exempt bonds, and we can't be doing things to make profit that aren't directly supporting our mission. And so we looked at our facility rental agreements, and there are some like situations where groups that rent space from, you know, the local high school, or the local elementary school, we can't rent to because of our tax exempt bonds used to purchase these facilities. And so we're in a different place. That was something I learned in this whole process. But we actually had to reach out and cancel agreements with a couple organizations that we had in place, because it would have been a problem if we were audited with our tax exempt bonds. So, something I didn't know, but that's, so the answer is, we did have solar panels at my previous school that they rented, and it did save us some money overall, and did seem to help, but we can explore more, but that was the advice I got.
It's great that it saved money, but it saves energy and.
That
all
as
of
well,
it.
yes.
Yeah, that's the most
It's good for the
important thing, I think.
environment and good for our kids and
Yeah.
school service and leadership.
That's it,
Absolutely.
that's exactly it.
And we can explore more.
Yeah.
So I can get more facts.
Yeah,
Right, like
yes,
I'm
yeah.
not just taking the word of,
Some more.
yeah. But that is what they told me.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much. All right, I'm going to share some minutes from our Finance Committee meeting. That was on the 13th. Some highlights, and Jonas spoke to this thoroughly as well, but our working budget has changed rapidly over the last month or so, and I would imagine days too, just changes.
A little bit.
Yeah,
I mean,
due to the addition of more students and more sections that were added.
so every month when Dustin, our accountant, gets the financials done for the month that ultimately ends up in our board packet, he gets them to me when we meet today on what day is it, Thursday? So he gets it to me Friday 2 weeks ago. And then we meet so I have the weekend to review. We sit on Monday and look at how the expenditures are tracking and figure out if we need to adjust anything in the working budget based on changes. And so that's where from month to month you'll see the working budget change. There's always the column next to it, here's the board approved budget. But that lets the board monitor it, and if they have concerns about, why is this changing so much, we can talk about them before we actually revise the budget. But when you make a budget in February or March for the following year, it's you're guessing how many students you're gonna have and how many revenue, and heck, this year the things changed a lot in the legislature that affected our revenue even after that affect our budget. And so, we revise and update that every month, and it's not uncommon. Typically, a lot of school districts will then just do a budget revision once in the fall, and sometimes even once in the spring. Because we're tweaking it every month and the board has an opportunity to look at it, Dustin recommends that most of their schools don't do a budget revision. They just keep updating the working budget until close to the end of the year, then they revise it so it ends up being accurate. But it's something we certainly could do. But so the answer is we adjust the working budget once a month when we meet. And so the board can see how things have changed.
Yes. We closed on our new building on July 22nd, and demo and construction started the next day. And it looks as though, as of when we met, it was going to be ready by the 29th. Is that the?
As of now, yes.
Yeah.
It is scheduled to have the inspection and us receive certificate of occupancy next Friday. It will not be complete. It will be usable for, if that case, for the first day of school. We will have temporary locks on the doors, right, with keys. They'll be secure, but it won't be the more secure permanent ones we'll have. The lockers will not be in until later in September. The blinds won't be in until later in September. So, it will be, but we'll try and do those things when they do come in after or before students are present.
Super. There is some increase of expenditures. One thing that was impressive to me was that you raised the budget for our marketing to $100,000 to increase gathering new potential families to join our school. There's been an increase in staffing needs because we're starting with 50 sections. And we needed furniture and other equipment for our new building and the new classrooms that we have in our building here. So that's that. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to move to approve July financial and August committee minutes.
Second.
Thank you. I have a second. Is there any discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Wonderful. The motion passes. And Allison is going to share with us the governance committee report.
All right, we met on August 14th. We discussed the 501, 502, and 503. There we revised, I don't know what the ED, revised ed to school.
Executive director.
Revised executive director to school leader instead, so just some verbiage. And then we added the Minnesota statute as referenced on the bottom of the policy. So there were some Minnesota statutes that were listed, but not it just was the word Minnesota statute, where we actually put the Minnesota statute in down below on the policy. And then 502, we removed section E, and because of that, then we need to add 502 into its first reading because more revisions were done other than just changing a few words. And then we revised the executive director to school leader in policy 503, and then made homework makeup consent. So we changed stuff to the policy again, so because we had to change a significant amount, we had to move it into a first reading. We also were planning on reviewing bylaws, and to review them, we wanted to make sure that there were any that we weren't doing, if we needed to add any bylaws or take any bylaws, kind of change that, but we decided to table that until the September governance meeting. And then we chose to table the policy 701. And 701 is a policy that we have as a draft, like we have it from someone else and we need to kind of adopt it as our own. So we decided to table that one as well and tackle those two bigger things in the September meeting.
Wonderful. I'm going to motion to approve July governance meeting minutes and enter policies 502 and 503 into a first reading.
A second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Vote is passed. The motion is approved. Okay. We have some consent agenda action.
Just read that paragraph.
Okay.
And then do a roll call vote. I'm gonna just ask for a roll call.
Okay, so the consent agenda items are considered routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member so requests, in which the item will be removed as a consent agenda item and addressed. Consent agenda items are as follows: the approval of July 17th, 2025 meeting minutes and approving the August personnel update.
And then make a motion to approve it, and then someone will second it, and then we'll do a roll call.
Okay, I'm gonna motion to approve these consent agendas.
Second.
Wonderful. All in favor? Any discussions?
We'll do a roll call.
Okay, no, yes.
And before you do the roll call, just for new board members, since we haven't actually ever done it here, but if a board member did want to remove an item, want to discuss an item, you wouldn't vote to pass them, you wouldn't have vote, or you wouldn't do the discussion. You do it before you make a motion. You make a motion to, somebody would make a motion to remove an item from the agenda.
And isn't that supposed to be done at the beginning of the meeting?
Yeah, we typically ask it during the approval of the.
Oh, do we?
Yeah.
Where's that?
It may not be clear to new
Oh,
board
yeah,
members.
that's right, and number 3.
So
Yes.
number 3,
Yeah.
if there's anything that
Yes.
you didn't like in the consent
Yes.
or didn't agree
Mm-hmm.
in
Good
the
catch.
consent.
And you want
Yeah.
to talk about it.
So that wouldn't
Yeah.
even need, that shouldn't even really happen now. But we really shouldn't discuss any items in the consent agenda. If you wanted to discuss them, that you'd have to remove them before. That's the whole purpose, is that these are items that we're not gonna take time on.
Okay, roll call vote, so William Beck,
Aye.
Natty Knudsen. Aye. Colleen Lautenbach.
Aye.
Allison Britt.
Aye.
Ashley Kachasik.
Aye.
Okay. Motion is passed. Approval of the student handbooks.
Okay, so I apologize, I put these all in the action item, it probably should have been in the presentation, because we were going to talk
Well,
about
it
them
could
a
be
little bit.
either way. So let me just talk about this a little bit, and we can decide if it's something you want to vote on. Everything in the employee handbook really is management. When you think about our chart of who does, whose role it is. And our responsibility, my responsibility is and then by extension, the administrative team as they're working with me, is to make sure that everything in the handbook fits into our policies, right? And so with that in mind, the board doesn't really need to approve the handbook. Sometimes there can be some weight behind it if the board does that approves it, but like it probably isn't something that the board would go through and, like, well, let's change this sentence and let's change that. That would be either addressed through policy or under the advising part of things in your role. So when you get this handbook, to review it ahead of time, you would contact me and say, why are you doing this, and who suggests a change here or there. And so it can't hurt to approve them. It just makes, that when we're doing it, disciplining a student with following the things that are in the handbook, we can say this has been approved by the board, and this is what we're operating under. But it's not required to, and probably not something the board should really get too into the individual items discussing at length, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that gets us too in the weeds in terms of what the board's role. That if there are things that we're doing in the handbook, we should talk about them, and if you're still not comfortable with them, and we get to a place to bring it up, but then you think about, okay, what would we change to policy so this would be different in our handbook in the future? Would
Yeah.
probably be the way to do that.
I think a lot of times, like a policy will say, this policy needs to be listed in a handbook.
Yes.
So we would just want to make sure that as the governance committee, as we're
Yeah.
addressing these policies, that they are appearing as such in the handbook, or the handbook is saying where to find
Yes.
them.
And
But that's more of a committee
yes,
thing.
but it would also be appropriate for a board member on the flip side to say, hey, there's something in the handbook that's not in compliance with our policies.
Yeah,
You shouldn't be doing that, you know what I mean? And that would be holding me accountable for following our policies. Which, there are so many and they're so extensive, and takes several years before, in my role, you get to where you really remember what's in all the policies.
Right.
You don't violate them on purpose, but I'm sure there are places where there's something I'm doing outside of policy without even knowing it, and an opportunity to catch that as well, and that's the purpose of governance. One of the things that when we, in governance meetings, go through the policies, one of the purposes of reviewing them regularly is we're going through and we're saying, okay, is this what we want our policies to be? But we're also saying, is this what we're doing? To try and catch those things, and then if it's not, okay, it's not what we're doing, do we need to change our policy, or do we need to change what we're doing? And so that's kind of how the governance role of the board works.
I do have
Yeah.
2 questions. There's paid time off is twice on the index.
Okay.
I don't know it's twice in the,
That's probably a typo.
yeah. Then the other question I had was, there's a portion that talks about like extra employment that employees can have. It mentions something, of course.
You in the employee handbook right now?
Yes. Are we
Okay.
talking about the student handbook first?
We can talk about, and even though we don't have to discuss it, we can, like I said, I think this could be a discussion item and not even and we can talk about it in any order.
Okay.
The handbooks, I don't really think it needs to be an action item.
Okay.
Unless the board really wants it to be an action item, I'm fine if it is too, if you want to say we established it, but I
I
kind
don't
of
know
think
I don't know the difference between the two.
there's no legal, I mean, legally, I think in terms of us maintaining the roles and remembering what they are, I'd almost rather the board doesn't approve it, right? But that the board would be pointing out and discussing it and pointing out anything that might be outside of policy and giving suggestions or saying, I think you should consider this type thing.
That sounds good.
Yes.
The outside employment, it mentions, and now it says you cannot get paid for things that you're doing while you're teaching. That was my understanding of a paragraph.
What page is it?
On my computer, it's page 7.
So-
Outside employment that constitutes a conflict of interest is prohibited. Employees may not receive any income or material gained from individuals outside WLA for materials produced or services rendered while performing their jobs. Sometimes teachers do teachers pay teachers, and I just wanted to clarify that.
From my perspective as an administrator, I don't think that's what that's talking about.
What is it talking about?
I
You have
think,
some emails from another job maybe?
yeah, and to me, well, let me just be clear here.
Yeah.
The admin team, we went through the lower school handbook and the upper school handbook line by line, right? And really made sure everything fit. This, the attorneys drafted for us to make sure that we were in compliance with all the new
Okay.
laws, right? And so we skimmed through it and looked for things that were outside, but that's not necessarily language that came from anybody
Okay.
here. So there might be things that we don't really care much about, we're just trying to make sure we're in compliance with the
Sure.
law. I would categorize this as that. And, but, you know, if there was, I don't know, something that the students developed a play, is what I'm imagining, right?
Okay.
And performed it here, and we want it to be something that we can use to fund our school, and the teacher went and sold it to somebody else.
Okay.
You know, that was leading, it
Okay.
was work created while they were here. That's the type of
Got
thing
it.
that I think that would provide protection against, not little teacher pay teacher size and stuff.
Oh, yeah, okay, I just wanted to make sure. That popped into my brain when I was reading that,
No,
and I just wanted to
it's
clarify.
it's fair, but that's not something that we would be particularly concerned about.
Okay, I was just checking. I don't want anyone to,
Maybe there's also like other teacher organizations where you teach students overseas, and so you couldn't be doing that job while you're doing this job.
That would, I'd say, would be the other concern, if what you were doing was keeping you from being effective in your current role,
okay,
right? But that, if it's anything, really, and, you know, even when you have tenured teachers in traditional school districts that have tenure, there's not very much stuff there's very few categories of why they could let you go, but one of them is essentially really broad in that it's anything that keeps you from being effective in your role, right, and keeps you from being able to be successful, and it's worded pretty broadly that way. So that would be the point where I think the two places it's the place I can think of, but I'm not thinking that there's anything in there that limits anything that anybody's doing right here in our school as far as I
okay,
know.
okay, just wanted to check.
And again, the employee one is really, the employees are responsible for signing off, but a lot of the employee handbook is about making sure we're legally covered in how we're doing things and that
Yes.
everything is consistent with the law.
Yeah.
And most of that was drafted by lawyers.
Okay, good, okay,
So, yeah,
wonderful.
I was wondering how much of this had changed from maybe
a lot. It's a completely different thing.
Okay.
I mean, it was completely redone, and then just a few things that, yeah, but in terms of material things that really impact our school, I think the only thing that was significant was really not even a change. But there's a piece in here about, that was in our previous handbook as well, that when teachers are being paid for paid time off, you're paid at a set amount. And that wasn't what was happening. Teachers were being paid at their daily rate of pay. But we wanted it to be at a set amount from the standpoint that part of the whole idea of being able to roll over days was we wanted to incentivize teachers to roll over days so they build up a bank for when they really, really need it, and so that teachers aren't taking days in May with the use it or lose it kind of thing. And so we did, it was like $100, we made it $150 is the amount, but we are gonna follow that. And then instead of the daily rate of pay, which has been the practice, even though it wasn't in the handbook, but then we also added a day of sick time to help make up for that, to give something for kind of that being a little bit less. And so that was a change, and again, it wasn't really a change in the handbook. Actually, the change is that what the handbook says is we're getting paid more than what it used to say. It just was, the practice wasn't being followed, it was in the handbook before. That tracking? Mm-hmm. So that's something I do need to clarify with staff when they're doing their handbooks this week and make sure they understand them till we get there.
Super. So we're not gonna ask for motions for these guys?
I don't think we need to
Okay.
vote on them.
Super.
There we go.
Okay. Future agenda items?
Before that, 9.3, we do need to approve that one.
You do need to approve that.
The assessment
Okay.
calendar and plan.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to approve the assessment calendar and plan.
Can you pull it, are you able to pull it up? There is one significant difference in our assessment calendar and plan from previous years. And again, this is something that's on the agenda next week to share with teachers, so sorry if I'm springing something on you teachers that are here. But I think overall it's a good thing. We have moved up to December our winter map growth reading and our winter diagnostic. And the reason we did this, and this is a change we made at a previous school I was at, the reasons we did that is multifold. One is like, they get back from winter break, and it takes 3 kids to get back to where they're at, right before winter break. And then, by the time you test and get the results, it's almost too late to really use the data all to help kids prepare for the MCAs in the spring, because it's so late that you get it. And so getting that information from winter break, be able to get the results right after break, teachers are able to really kind of use that information and make their plans for the second part of the year with the data, and with the idea that may help us be more effective in preparing kids for the tests. The one thing that the board will be aware of is it's most likely if we share with the board our winter results, right, our winter progress, you will probably make less progress from the fall assessment to the winter assessment because they've had another month less of instruction when you do the winter. So we can't look and say, well, we're going backwards in how much progress we're making from fall to winter, right? We kind of have a new baseline for what that progress is, and that is the downside of this. But with the admin team, curriculum director, there was discussion with some teachers around it. It wasn't necessarily a full staff discussion, but we felt like this was the right thing to do. And this does not need to be on our website till the first day of school. So there would be time for the board to be like, ooh, we have concerns about this. But that's the rationale, that's the thinking. And that's why we made the calendar this way.
It looks like the testing for April, the MCAs, on the side, on the panel, it says April 15th and 16th, but on the calendar, it's 14th and 15th, and last year we did it on a Tuesday and Wednesday. So I don't know.
Which is Tuesday, Wednesday?
The 14th, 15th.
Yeah. That's
Okay,
just,
so on the panel on the side, the 14th and 15th should be listed, and then April 21st and 22nd should be listed.
And then 28th and 29th.
Oh, yes.
They're off.
So we can approve it with those revisions, and then we'll make the revisions before we post it on the board. and thing. But Cassidy will need to make sure that Megan owns this document, our curriculum coordinator, she'll need to make those changes and be aware.
No dibbles for 4th and 5th this
Yeah,
year?
it looks like a different screener
Yeah,
and a different time.
yeah.
Where's it say?
CAPT screener?
The CAPT screener is not until November. Previously, 4th and 5th were doing dibbles at the beginning of the year as well. Now it's the map growth. They did map growth and dibbles last year.
And why in November, right before
Yeah.
Thanksgiving?
I'm sorry, I was not aware of that, or I'm not remembering that
Yeah.
change. Is there is one piece that's something we were required to do around screening for dyslexia to
dyslexia screener?
be in compliance with the new READ Act law. It's coming back to me now. I'm pretty sure that's why, and so we had to do this assessment. And I'm thinking that, if I'm remembering correctly, and we'll need to confirm this, that the thinking was doing this assessment and doing the dibbles again was just way too much testing. And I
Yeah.
think that was the rationale.
Okay.
So it's like
Thank you.
switching to be back on map growth and then adding in the dyslexia screener.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll confirm all that, and if any part of that is incorrect, we'll either email the whole board or bring it back to next month if there's something that's significantly material about the reasons. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that that's what it was. I know I was very involved in the discussions about moving the testing to December instead of like January. But that, I think, I was kind of told this is what we're thinking, and it was, okay.
Okay. So we need to, I'm going to motion to approve the assessment calendar and plan with the changes.
Yeah, and with the revisions to the April.
Yes. Can I get a second?
I second.
Any discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion has been passed. And now, board communication, future items? Anybody? No? Okay. All right, housekeeping is that we will meet on Thursday, September 18th at 5:30. And with that, I shall adjourn.
Make a motion?
Oh, yes, okay, I make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Wonderful. There's a second. Any discussion? Okay, good. Everyone in motion, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Wonderful. Okay. Our meeting is adjourned.